Welcome to Georgia. Georgia is a country that is situated at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. The territory of our country is approximately 70,000 square kilometers, where around 4 million people live. Georgia is the homeland of the earliest hominins outside Africa. Traces of early agricultural societies, as well as the world's most ancient roots of wine culture, are found here. And our Georgian scripts are among the oldest writings of the world.
Since the 4th century, Tbilisi is the capital of Georgia, owning unique and multicultural heritage. And here most institutions of the Georgian National Museum are located.
Guten Tag.
Welcome to Georgia.
კეთილი იყოს თქვენი მობრძანება ღვინის სამშობლოში.
The Georgian National Museum is the largest scientific and cultural institution of our country that was established in 2004 by the unification of 5 museums. Today, the organization consists of 11 museums and 5 scientific institutes.
Dieses Haus hier ist das älteste und größte unserer Museen. Gegründet während der Besatzung im Russischen Reich Mitte des 19. Jahrhunderts als Hauptmuseum über das gesamte Kaukasusregion. Seit dieser Zeit werden Objekte aus unserem reichen und vielfältigen Sammlungen in Ausstellungen für die Wissensvermittlung genutzt.
In the treasury of the National Museum are collected biodiversity of Caucasus nature, history of ancient agriculture, metal production, ancient tradition of gold extraction, medieval art, traditional clothing, the difficult Soviet past of the 20th century.
Von besonderer Bedeutung für Georgien und unser Haus sind die faszinierenden Entdeckungen, die seit 1991 in Tbilisi unter Leitung von David Lorkipanidze gemacht werden.
The Georgian National Museum is developing, and not just in Tbilisi. It's very important to have a different high-level places inside of Georgia, and Tbilisi is one of them. We have now site museum, but I hope we will have bigger museum very soon. This is a place where we have a dialogue with public, and for National Museum it's very important to connect people. But also it's important that we should be connected, and we are part now big international network, and our main partner was always Germany, is, and I hope we will continue our very close cooperation in different fields, and particularly to telling people history of human evolution.
This is Dmanisi, the dwelling place of the first European people, located 85 kilometers from Tbilisi, the capital of Georgia.
In 2000, here we found this jaw. It was just here, and it was very enigmatic, and we had many questions, and we tried to figure out whom belongs this jaw. And 5 years after, we found this famous skull 5. And one day we realized that this jaw belongs to this skull. And now we have most complete cranium ever found in the world. So this skull has everything. Mandible, all face, all parts of the skull are well preserved. This is 1.8 million Homo erectus finds, and it has a very small brain capacity. And here in this place we found another 2 skulls and 2 jaws and different postcranial bones. I would say that this is one of the most prolific places where you could learn about human evolution, about environment, about stone tools.
All the important exhibits found here are sent to the laboratory.
გეოლოგია პალეონტოლოგიის ფონთან არსებულ ლაბორატორიაში ხდება დმანისის არქეოლოგიური მონაპოვრების რესტავრაცია და კონსერვაცია. კოლექციები ორგანიზირებულია, მათთვის შექმნილია ციფრული მონაცემთა ბაზები და ხდება ამ კოლექციებზე მულტიდისციპლინარული სამეცნიერო კვლევები, როგორც ქართველი, ასევე უცხოელი მეცნიერების მიერ.
After long research and processing, the findings are gathered in the exhibition hall.
On this exhibition, we wanted to show not only the Stone Age era of this region, but its place in whole human evolution. For this purpose, in the middle of this exhibition, we placed different paleoanthropological materials found in different parts of the world, telling the story of last million years of human evolution. We start with 7 million old cranium of Sahelanthropus chadensis. Among them, there is also 2.4 million old mandible of Homo rudolfensis from Malawi, and of course the skull of Homo erectus from Dmanisi, and so on up to the Homo sapiens. We distributed these skulls only by chronological order to let visitors go through the objects and discover the different features of the skulls on their own, making them understand how evolution works in general.
Due to the geographical location, the South Caucasus has been a crossroads of culture since the earliest period. This exhibition presents the discoveries of biological and cultural evolution of the Stone Age people in Georgia.
Human biological and cultural evolution are closely linked to the technological innovations. The Dmanisi early Stone Age site is part of that big story. Before the Dmanisi findings, there was an assumption that the first out of Africa migrants should have been already equipped with the developed stone tools like hand axes or cleavers, but in reality they could well survive armed just with the most simple stone tools belonging to core and flake industry. Based on previously existed paleoanthropological record, they have to have been quite tall and big-brained, but the Dmanisi Homo erectus contradicted these ideas also.
We work in Africa on the origin of the genus Homo about 2.5 million years ago, and these early humans left Africa for the first time 2 million years ago and expanded into the Caucasus. And that's why our cooperation with Georgia is so important, because here, with these fantastic fossils from Dmanisi, we can really work out why these people left Africa, due to environmental changes and because they started to develop bioculturally to a new level.
Scientists believe that the discoveries in Dmanisi are only the beginning.
Generally, in Dmanisi, we already have very big collection of earliest humans out of Africa. We have 5 skulls, we have many postcranial elements, we have many extinct animals' bones like ostriches, rhinos, elephants, saber-toothed cats, and thousands of stone tools. But many things, I hope, will come back.
The research at the place of residence of the first Europeans is ongoing. Researchers promise to surprise us with the new discoveries of Dmanisi.
Grakliani archaeological site became very important during the last 10 years. And there are several reasons why this is so important. First of all, this is multi-layer archaeological site. It means that we have here 11 different period cultural layers from early Paleolithic time till to the 5th century AD. So it means we have here history of development of society during the last approximately 2 million years. What is another reason why Grakliani is so important site? Because of existence of several very well preserved layers. First of all, this is mid of first millennium BC sanctuary and the dwellings of the same period. And what is the most important one, this is 10th century BC inscription. This inscription is earliest on the territory of Georgia and Caucasus, and one of the earliest on the territory of Near Eastern countries also. So what we are doing here, digging, those are remains of dwellings, sanctuaries. There is a necropolis also, west from the territory of settlement. We have already excavated more than 300 graves of different periods, from the early Bronze Age, from the 4th millennium BC, till to the 5th century AD. We have, as I told already, different period cultural layers, and in these layers, according to the artifacts, what we discovered now, we have very different social stratification of society here, especially in time of so-called late Bronze Age, which is the 2nd millennium BC, and very beginning of early Iron Age. We have clear stratification of layers, noblemen's layers, clearly, because we have different kind of golden and silver items in the graves. In another case, we have bronze items, just weapons and etc. So if we will analyze all this material, so we have rather clear picture of the people who lived here. In most of cases, those are local population, but we can follow also to imported goods, what we have here, for example, South Mesopotamian stamp seals of 4th millennium BC, cold tube, for example, glass vessel for perfume produced on the territory of Persia, painted pottery, etc., etc. So we have very good picture also of migration of people. So this was let's say, complete historical situation, what we know from the territory of Near Eastern countries and on the territory of all Caucasia. But this was a very special place because we have concentration of very important artifacts imported from different civilization centers here exactly on Grakliani Hill. As I already mentioned, Grakliani Grakliani Hill is different than other archaeological sites in Georgia and Caucasus, generally speaking, because of existence of 11 different cultural layers. Around the Grakliani Hill, there are several archaeological sites of Bronze Age, early Bronze Age or Middle Bronze Age, final stage of Middle Bronze Age and late Bronze Age. I'm talking now about the 4th, 3rd and 2nd millennium BC. There also we have some cultural layers, 3 or 5 layers, or Hovle, for example, which is also not far from Grakliani Hill. There we have only 8 cultural layers from the 13th century BC till to the 2nd century BC. So there are many interesting archaeological sites around, which gives very good background of interpretation of historical events happening on the territory of Grakliani Hill. As far as we have cultural layers, let's say, as I already mentioned, from Paleolithic time and especially after 4th millennium BC, which is early Bronze Age, we can follow development of society here. So this was area settled by local population, but at the same time we have a picture of migration of different tribes from south. In most of cases they are coming from south, from Mesopotamian area. So we know that even after 5th millennium BC we can follow the migration of people from central Mesopotamia to the Caucasian area, even to the North Caucasian area. So there are evidences showing the migration from 5th millennium BC, 4th millennium BC, beginning of 3rd millennium BC, and especially in time of late Bronze Age, which is second half of 2nd millennium BC, we have very clear picture of migration people in different areas, not only on Grakliani Hill and not only Georgia, but everywhere. This was some kind of very important historical case, let's say, because of different kind of economic communication, cultural relations, etc., etc. So all those interrelation were background of migration of different tribes. Especially I can speak now about the 2nd millennium BC, which is very important here because of existence of, as I mentioned, earliest inscription on the territory of all the Caucasus. So this is result of interrelation between different tribes, local tribes and the tribes who migrated from the south to the direction of central Transcaucasia. So among the different items what we discovered in Grakliani here, there are pottery also of different periods and made of with different technologies. So for example, this one, this nice plate, was made in 12th century BC. It was discovered in the graves with different kind of bronze items, daggers and the spear, etc. But now we are talking about the pottery. So this is so-called jar with tubular handle. This is a tubular handle. It was made 2600 years ago. And after this immediately we have, after 5th century BC, there are different kind of painted pottery. For example, I would like show this one painted a red color pottery, or this very nice jar and the ritual function, of course, because of hollow here. So, and we have very nice cups, very typical for 5th and the 4th century, because this was period of existence of huge Achaemenid Persian Empire in all this area, everywhere on the territory of Persia, on the territory of modern Turkey, Egypt, and etc. Everywhere you can find such type of pottery, but all of them what I'm showing now, we are made here on the territory of Grakliani Hill, because we discovered also kilns of different period, 11th century, 6th century, 5th century, etc. But what I would like to show, and what is a brilliant, really brilliant item, this is sculpture of ram's head. This was decoration of inscription in the sanctuary of 10th century BC. This is unique as well as the inscription, as I mentioned already, but this sculpture is symbol of fertility, and because this was so popular in all Georgia on the territory of Caucasus. We have Grakliani Archaeological Expedition, Grakliani project. We have financial support from the Agency of Cultural Heritage Protection of Georgia, which is part of Ministry of Culture, but our project is open for volunteers and all kind of financial support is welcome. So you can participate in our project, and I hope very much that you will be happy of this.
Throughout history, a variety of ways to scientifically classify different groups of humans have popped up, most notable to the story today being a system suggested by a pioneering social scientist called Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. Indeed, he was such a pioneer, he's today considered the father of scientific anthropology. Building upon others' classification schemes, including Carl Linnaeus and Christoph Meiners, Blumenbach developed a five-fold categorization system for humans: Caucasian, Ethiopians, Mongolians, Americans, and Malays. However, it is important to note that while Blumenbach's system did involve color as one dividing factor, with Caucasian being white, Mongoloid being yellow, Malayan being brown, Ethiopian being black, and American as red, his way of classifying different groups of humans was not intended to be based on just a single divider. In fact, when presenting his classification scheme, he explicitly states before outlining it, I must prefix a double warning. First, that on account of the multifarious diversity of the characters, according to their degrees, one or two alone are not sufficient, but we must take several joined together, and then that this union of characters is not so constant, but what it is liable to innumerable exceptions in all and singular of these varieties. Still, this enumeration is so conceived as to give a sufficiently plain and perspicuous notion of them in general. He then goes on to describe the Caucasian grouping as follows. Color white, cheeks rosy, hair brown or chestnut colored. Head subglobular, face oval straight, its parts moderately defined, forehead smooth, nose narrow, slightly hooked, mouth small, the primary teeth placed perpendicularly to each jaw. The lips, especially the lower one, moderately open, the chin full and rounded. To this first variety belong the inhabitants of Europe, except the Lapps and the remaining descendants of the Finns, and those of Eastern Asia as far as the river Obi, the Caspian Sea and the Ganges, and lastly those of Northern Africa. Alright, so where did he actually get the name from? Over the course of his study, he determined that people from the area around Georgia were the ideal archetype for this group. He thus borrowed the name from the Caucasus mountain range along the northern border of Georgia. Or in his own words, I have taken the name of this variety from Mount Caucasus, both because its neighborhood, and especially its southern slope, produces the most beautiful race of men, I mean the Georgian, and because all physiological reasons converge to this, that in that region, it seems we ought with the greatest probability to place the autochthonies of mankind. For in the first place, that stock displays, as we have seen, the most beautiful form of the skull, from which, as from a mean and primeval type, the others diverge by most easy graduations on both sides to the two ultimate extremes, that is, on the one side the Mongolian, on the other side the Ethiopian. Besides, it is white in color, which we may fairly assume to have been the primitive color of mankind, since, as we have shown, it is very easy for that to degenerate into brown, but very much more difficult for dark to become white, when the secretion and precipitation of this carbonaceous pigment has once deeply struck root. It's worthy of note here that, unlike many of his contemporaries, Blumenbach was very outspoken, including writing several essays on the subject against these sort of classifications being used to justify various social abuses, or stating one group was inherently superior to another. For example, with regards to those that fell under his Ethiopian classification, he stated, I'm of opinion that after all these numerous instances I have brought together of Negroes' capacity, it would not be difficult to mention entire well-known provinces of Europe, from out of which you would not easily expect to obtain offhand such good authors, poets, philosophers, and correspondents of the Paris Academy, and on the other hand, there is no so-called savage nation known under the sun which has so much distinguished itself by such examples of perfectibility and original capacity for scientific culture, and thereby attached itself so closely to the most civilized nations of the earth as the Negro. Or as noted Princeton historian Dr. Nell Irvin Painter sums up, Blumenbach wrote forcefully of the kindredness of the human races. He opposed the stress on racial hierarchies of worth by more conservative colleagues in his own university and elsewhere in Europe. There existed only one race of people, he insisted, criticizing those like Dutch anatomist Petrus Camper, whose facial angles prove so useful to scientific racists' so-called great chain of being, linking humankind with apes. Camper's racist elaborators placed Negroes and Kalmucks as close to apes as to Europeans. Possessing the first known Afrikaner library and sharing the motives of future black bibliophiles, Blumenbach dedicated several pages of his contributions to natural history from 1806 to the vindication of Ethiopians, i.e. Africans' capacity for civilization. Throughout his work, and especially in the definitive 1795 edition of On the Natural Variety of Mankind, Blumenbach rejected racial hierarchy and emphasized the unity of mankind. In the end, Blumenbach's classification system ultimately resulted in Caucasian becoming synonymous with white, even though in the third edition of his On the Natural Variety of Mankind, he would downplay skin color as a definitive marker, owing to the observation that many European people, when exposed to significant sun, would become brown. Ultimately, around the mid-20th century, this sort of classification more or less went the way of the dodo in the scientific world, thanks to the switch to the more advanced genetic classifications of different groups. However, for whatever reason in the late 20th century, among the lay people of America particularly, the use of the term once again rose in popularity. As to why, it's generally speculated that it has something to do with people being uncomfortable being called either black or white. Instead, people went with things like Caucasian and African American.